Every Star Wars fan has their own rankings of the film, and I'm no different. I'm going to be ranking every live-action Star Wars film from worst to best. So with the intro out of the way, let's just get into it. I'm also using Battlefront 2 footage because I'm too lazy to get actual footage, so deal with it. Coming in last place, we have Attack of the Clones. Now, Attack of the Clones isn't a 100% terrible film. Yes, it's at the bottom of the list. But that's because, one half of the film, I can say, is bad. The other half, which is the Obi-Wan stuff on, Kamino, Geonosis, about the start of the Clone Wars, all that is good. And that's what I like about the film. Well, the stuff I don't like is pretty more apparent. And it's the Anakin Padme love story, and it's not handled well. Because their love story is the pivotal point in the saga. That is the purpose of the film, is them getting together. Because if they don't get together, then they don't get married. No Luke and Leia, which means no Star Wars then, basically. And it was butchered. It was not well executed. Also, the dialogue between Anakin and Padme, only in that part. The rest of the film does not really have this. It's very cringy, very awkward. The dialogue's just really, really bad. Even when I was a kid, I remember just watching it, and I'm just like, what is going on? Why is it like this? Even as a child, I had that preposition that this is just not a good part of the film, and that this is not the best Star Wars. It's actually, I consider it the worst Star Wars film. But that's not to say it's a bad film overall. I just think the purpose of the film is butchered really badly. That's why it's at the bottom of the list. Coming in at number 11, we have The Phantom Menace. Now, I ranked this a bit higher than Attack of the Clones. The reason why it's second to last is because it's a very convoluted film. It's both linear, but also complicated. It's so weird how it managed to do both at the same time. This film was ahead of its time. It pretty much revolutionized how modern blockbusters are made today, and I can't give it discredit for that. It did modernize blockbusters in a big way, that it's difficult to keep track of what is happening or what the main point of the film is, because there's so many different storylines in The Phantom Menace that you start to realize what is happening, what is the main point. Now, the only way to do that is watching a YouTube video to understand what's going on, which you shouldn't, but you do, and it actually makes the films actually a lot better if you actually watch a YouTube video first. Then you'll understand what's going on. And, yeah, that's why that's on second to last, because, if you need a YouTube video to understand what the plot of the film is, or to understand the story of the film, then that's not really good, is it? Coming in ninth place, we have Solo, A Star Wars Story. Now, Solo isn't a terrible film. It's just boring in some parts of the film. The highlight of the film is definitely the Kessel Run. That's basically the only reason why you should watch it. There is some cool things in there, but it is overall a boring film. The reason why Solo is ninth place is because it's not as cringy as Attack of the Clones and The Phantom Menace is. It's not. The acting is very good. That's basically the only reason why it's above the two, installment films, because it's not cringy. The dialogue isn't cringy or bulky. It's just a somewhat boring film, but it's still a kind of enjoyable. It kind of is. And all three of these rankings that are at the bottom, they're not, even though yes they are bad films, they're great Star Wars films. Such great Star Wars stuff in these films. And just because they're in bottom three does not mean that they're terrible. It's just the way that they execute the story is not the best. Number 8, we have The Last Jedi, and oh boy, this is the most controversial Star Wars film. Oh my god, where do I even begin? Because I feel like I should talk about my stance on the film, because there's two sides, the side that hates The Last Jedi and the side that likes The Last Jedi. I am neutral, so both sides can attack me. I am neutral. Everything that I like about this film, there's one thing that I hate about this film. I like one part, I hate one part. So it's very difficult for me to rank this, but I'm just putting it here on the list because, like, I'm ranking it based off of the quality of the film itself. Like, not if it's good as a Star Wars film, but good as just a film in general. That's how I'm ranking these things. And it's a good film, but there's also a part of this ranking which is based off of, you know, how well it introduces new things to Star Wars. And this film is anti-Star Wars at some points. And this film has the most, you could say, wokeness or SJW-ness in the film. You literally have a character with purple hair. That's can't be any more clearer what they're trying to pull off here. But there are things I like about it. There are things I don't like about it. It's a functional film, but as a Star Wars film, not necessarily. But there's some Star Wars stuff in there. It's not completely anti-Star Wars, but it's a film that I'm putting it here. Coming in at number 7, we have The Rise of Skywalker. This is the only Star Wars film that I did not rank. So here we are, we're ranking it finally. And this film is basically in the middle-ish, I think the list is now, or towards the middle of the list now. And Rise of Skywalker is a fun mess. It's a very fast-paced film, but it's very fun. And I'm putting it above The Last Jedi because it's more Star Wars-y. There's a lot more Star Wars stuff in the film. And I'm not talking about like nostalgia or anything like that. I mean, I'm talking like just stuff that connects to the other films and saga as a whole. I like that. You know, it doesn't have to be big, it can be very subtle, and The Rise of Skywalker has that quite a bit actually. So I like that. It gets brownie points for that. I do think this is a sci-fi fantasy. Like, if you're someone that really likes sci-fi, this film's for you because it's very much in that realm, which can also be a detriment because it's not really about the Force, really. You would think that would be, considering this is the last film in the saga, but it's more sci-fi based, which is kind of annoying because a lot of stuff is related to sci-fi in this film, and it gets very kind of convoluted and heavy when it comes to that. So, and things kind of don't make sense because stuff is introduced that you have no idea what it is. You have to read like a book or whatever, which you shouldn't if you're watching a film or the last part in a trilogy even. So it's a fun mess. I like the story and the plot and what the main characters go through, but when it comes to actually the lore and how it connects to the rest of the franchise, it doesn't really connect. So, well, some things do, but others don't. So it's gonna be right here because it just is. It kind of just has to be here. Coming in at number 6, we have The Force Awakens. Now, I think The Force Awakens is the best out of the 3 sequel trilogies. And if you noticed, the last 3 rankings are all sequel trilogies. I rank the sequel trilogy towards the middle. I know some people hate the sequel trilogy, but to me, I think it is average. And The Force Awakens is the best out of the 3. A really strong start to this trilogy. I remember back in the day, back in 2015, early 2016, a lot of hype. Everyone was like, oh my god, new trilogy, new Star Wars, what's The Last Jedi gonna be like? And people back then were much more different now than it is today, which I kind of miss those days. But, so well. But The Force Awakens is a glimpse into that time period, because The Force Awakens is actually treated like an actual Star Wars film. It's, even though yes, it's pretty much a repeat of the plot from another Star Wars film, but it's different. You know, this is how you properly reboot something, even though it's not really a reboot. It's more a reintroduction into the franchise for people who have not really been keeping up to date with Star Wars, but it's still a fun plot, it's still a fun story. The new characters are great, the returning characters are great, and I don't really have anything much to say. Like, Force Awakens is I feel like it's more of a forgotten film because of The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker kind of overtaking The Force Awakens, but The Force Awakens as a film by itself is a good film. Coming in number 5, we have Rogue One. And you know, I said how The Force Awakens was a good Star Wars movie and I really like it as a Star Wars film. Well, Rogue One is the best Disney Star Wars film. It feels just like Star Wars. Could be because it's set in the original trilogy, but that could be why. But honestly, Rogue One feels so much like Star Wars, and it feels it's such a great film. Even though yes, the first act and second half are just pointless and they're not really that interesting, it still feels like Star Wars. And the third act, oh my god, it is awesome. You know, it's one of those films where you go to see it just for one part of the film. And Act 3 in the final of the film is what everyone wants to see. You know, no one cares about Act 1 or Act 2. Act 3 is where it's at. Coming in at number 4, we have Return of the Jedi. And Return of the Jedi is an amazing film. It is a great way to end the original trilogy. And I know, I remember in my original rankings, I kind of crap talked Return of the Jedi a little bit for the special effects and how it's like, oh, this film isn't like that great actually, but I kind of downplayed it. But in actuality, Return of the Jedi is an amazing film, and I really love it. Like, it is a great, fantastic film to watch. All the characters feel like themselves. It's not like really the success of Star Wars really turned the film into something corporate. Well, at least not yet it didn't, but at this point in time, George Lucas and his team really wanted to make this a finale that was epic and bigger in scale to the prior two films, and he did that successfully. Yes, Act 1 can be a bit kind of pointless, because it has nothing to do with the rest of the film, but I understand why they had to do it, because Han was frozen in carbonite, and they kind of need to unfreeze him because there was, behind the scenes, there was like contract stuff, which is interesting to learn, which kind of explains why Act 1 is at Jabba's palace, and they don't really mention that after they get Han freed, so I understand why, and also why Han is kind of pointless in the film. Like, they didn't really need him, but he's there because he wasn't originally in the script at first. Like I said, it's really interesting to learn about behind the scenes of the film, because, like, how do you end the original trilogy? And this is how. Like, I cannot imagine a different way to end this trilogy, and it brings one of the greatest villains of all time, Palpatine, in, which is fantastic. It redeems Darth Vader to Anakin. Like, there's so much stuff that's good in this film. Also, green lightsabers. Before they didn't exist, Return of the Jedi, they exist. So, this film has a lot, and I really love this film. Top 3, here we go, and Revenge of the Sith. Oh my god, Revenge of the Sith, I love this film. This film, to me, is an epic tale. You don't need to know anything before watching this film. That's how great it is. It's great as a standalone story, but also connecting to the original trilogy. This film is the most important film in the saga, and it's just fantastic. I love it. It starts off in the Clone Wars and it ends with the start of the Empire. It's great. I remember at the end of the film when the Death Star was shown first time, I was jumping in my seat up and down. I was hyped. Even though it's a prequel film, and I know what happens, you get hyped. This film is hype. Like, that's what it is. It's such a grand, epic film that I love. And yes, I am putting this above an original trilogy film. I am. That's just how good it is. Everyone put in their 110%. George Lucas did, all the actors did, the VFX did, but everyone put in their all for this film, and it shows. And I appreciate it so much. It's such a great film to rewatch over and over and over again. It does not get boring for me because there's so much stuff happening in this film. You get to see how Anakin Skywalker turns into Darth Vader, and it's so great and grand. You know, like I said, you don't need to watch the prior two films to really know. I mean, some people complain that Anakin turned too quickly, but to me, I think it's fine. Anakin being tricked to save his wife is such a simple and relatable thing to do. You know, you're making a deal with someone, you don't really know the ramifications because you're in love, you kind of save the person that you love, and it ends up not only killing Padme, but also turning Anakin into a machine, you could say, sort of. Anyway, this film is very, very good. If you've not seen it in a long time, go watch it. It's a great film. Number 2 is A New Hope, and this film for me is a classic. I think if you watch this film, probably the most out of any of them. It's such a rewatchable film, and it's such a simple film, but at the same time it's not. There's a lot of stuff in this film that happens. I like the way that they actually set up this film, because this is the first Star Wars film ever made. Ever. Like, this is what audiences were treated to back in 1977, and even to a younger audience, it still catches the attention of anyone. Doesn't matter how old you are, everyone can watch this film. No matter who you are, every human can watch this film and get on board. That's the magic of Star Wars. That's what it is, and happens in this film. Every line of dialogue is iconic. Every scene is iconic. Even the scenes that aren't that grand, or that were changed in the special editions, are still iconic to me. For me, A New Hope was originally supposed to be at number 1, but another film that I rewatched recently kind of took number 1. Number 1, we have The Empire Strikes Back. This is one of the greatest films of all time. And it may be my favorite film of all time. I don't know, I have to actually look and see, but The Empire Strikes Back is such a unique film because this is probably what people think when they think of Star Wars. Like, for me, for example, the Terminator films, I think of Terminator 2. Even though I've never seen the first one, whenever I think of Terminator, I think of Terminator 2 and the story of that film. I think it's the same thing if you're not really a Star Wars fan. The Empire Strikes Back is a film that you recognize. Everything in this film is iconic. All the planets, characters, new characters, locations, props, aliens, they're all iconic. They're all memorable. A lot of stuff was introduced into this film, and even the tone. The tone is what carried forward from the rest of the saga, and every other Star Wars film tried to live up to this film, which is kind of a detriment because they're trying to become greater than a film which they should just let it be on its own, but whatever. Also, I think the reason why this film is so good and grand, even though it's not really that grand when you really look at the plot, it's just the Empire striking back. And that's why it's called that. But from the very second it begins, from the very second it ends, there's conflict all the time. There's so much conflict in this film. And there's very little points in the film where they are just resting, or the main characters are just resting. There is constant action, constant conflict, all the time. And it keeps you engaged. It keeps you, entertained. Because when the film's over, you're like, wait a minute, it's over? That's when people react, because, it's over. That's it. On a cliffhanger. It's just such a great film because you want more. You always want more. I don't even say it's a great film. It's a excellent film. It's a almost perfect film. I can say very little in terms of criticism because everything is just great. Do you agree with my picks? Because I think some of you are going to be different to my ranking, but I also, from the original ranking that I did a couple years back, I actually like this one more. It's better. So yeah, also The Rise of Skywalker is ranked in this, which wasn't before, because it was before the film came out. So this is basically a complete live action list. No animated Clone Wars film. I'm not doing that. I don't think I've ever seen that film, or I did for the first 5 minutes and I just turned it off back in 2008, but so I'm not ranking that. Yeah, I like this. I like this ranking a lot more than my original one. Same with the Star Wars characters list. I did a Star Wars characters list. Top 10 favorite Star Wars characters. Go watch that. I actually have a whole entire playlist of rankings that I did throughout the years. Not only on this channel, but also on my other channel, Keith aka Bob, which I do other gaming type of videos on that channel. So go check that out. The playlist in the end credits. In about a couple seconds. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe. I'm going to go now, so goodbye everyone.